This video is brought to you by Law Excellence IAS Academy.
Dear students, good morning. Welcome to Law Excellence R&D. Let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 29th August 2019. The first article for discussion, hardly the brick and mortar of a revival. So this is about ongoing economic crisis in India. I am using the word economic crisis. Let's understand the roots of this crisis. Over last 2 decades in India, there was an expansionary phase in which credit expansion, fiscal expansion, everything has happened. After that, there is a reduction phase. So in this reduction phase, the fiscal consolidation, credit consolidation has happened. During this expansion phase, roots or seeds of certain issues were sown. For example, the credit growth also led to the growth of NPAs. So this banking crisis is one such an issue. And the second issue is, during this particular phase, we have got lot of economic activity. But however, to sustain this economic activity, efficiencies are necessary. But we did not focus on these efficiencies in the industry. We just went ahead with economic expansion. Third is certain steps. Let's talk about monetization and demonetization, introduction of GST. These steps are not well planned. The demonetization was a colossal failure. Because of this, the money and the business, trust, was weakened in India. So, again, another aspect of this problem is demand. So, the demand in the economy is coming down. The reason is, this expansionary phase of economic growth, it has kept more money in less hands. Remember again, more money in less hands. It means that rather than giving money to more number of people, it has made certain people much richer. And the major reason for this is jobless growth, especially within the services sector. So, when money is not distributed, then spending is also not distributed. And money gets concentrated only in few people, then their needs will be fulfilled at a certain point and the money gets accumulated rather than creating demand. So, this accumulation of the money and due to unequal growth is another reason. So, we could have raised the employability and we could have focused on agriculture and industry so that more jobs are created. Second, always we were worried about inflation. To keep the inflation low, we also kept the salaries of the people low. So this is what the China also did. To make export competitive their products, they have kept voluntarily the salaries of the employees very low. So inflation is under control, but at the same time, the buying capacity of the people did not increase. So these all steps today have killed the demand in Indian economy. So obviously when demand fails, production will fail. Production fails, growth fails. A vicious cycle will be developed. Further to this, there are certain other operational issues. Let's take, there is no positive business environment. The government wanted to fix this problem through superficial ease of doing business index improvements, etc., rather than providing for a consolidated push towards it. And second, if we observe today in India, more and more the sectors which are collapsing are strong employability creating sectors like construction and also automobile sector, etc. So this clearly shows that what is getting worst hit is again employment sector. As employment job creating sector is getting worst hit, this situation is going to be more dangerous. So what the industry is expecting at this point of time, provide us more and more money, fiscal space. The government is worried more about banking crisis, so it is not interested in recapitalization because political costs are very heavy. And rather than providing for liberal finances to the industry, the government is focusing on fiscal consolidation. And the most important thing is Today, the economic recession is not just a phenomenon of India, it is happening worldwide. So, there are headwinds across the world too. So, what the author is arguing is the failure in India is due to failure to create demand. On the other side, government is trying to work on the supply side. Let's take it will ask the people to buy the cars. It is providing something called an 30% depreciation on buying of the car in the first year. So in such a scenario, who will buy the car? The rich and influential and the rich and powerful. And the second thing, whatever FPIs, the tax on them was removed. It can do some good to the capital markets and people who invest over there. Then what about the people who can really create the demand in this economy? Farmers, agricultural laborers, workers, industrial workers. We have to focus over there. That is what this talks about. We need a greater rural and labor focus towards creating the demand which is sustainable in the economy. That is how the argument goes on. The next, democracy and its discontents. This article is based actually on an article which has come up in Economist newspaper. It made a very bold statement, Economist magazine, that is, governments are in office, elected governments are in office, but they do not have the power. So elected governments are in office, but they are not powerful. Why this statement is made by the economists? If you observe either in the United States of America, West, etc., the governments which are coming up, these are more and more unstable, and also their decisions are not concrete and stable. And finally, the right-wing growth over there is also leading to something called majoritarianism. So, when we can protect the liberal democracy, or the days of the democracy are coming to an end, we can protect the liberal democracy when we have strong institutions. Democracy without institutions is a shell without substance. So these institutions, they carry the burden of the democracy on their shoulders. In this context, various institutions close to the people exist, and then intermediate institutions, and then we have vertical institutions, RLs, state-owned institutions. The state-owned institutions like parliament, etc., and intermediate institutions which can mediate between people and the formal state institutions, it is missing. Media, civil society, these are the institutions of the people. So we need to develop these intermediate institutions. In this context, in the media, he made a very important statement which I liked. Social media can provide a space for criticism of different ideas, is providing the space, but it is not providing the space for reconciliation. So opposite views we can know in the social media, but opposing groups cannot be reconciliated in this particular section. So in this context, these intermediary institutions which can be created, they can be helpful to sustain the weight of the democracy. As of now, he says, vertical institutions of democracy like parliament, judiciary, etc., and then lateral institutions of democracy, which are kind of these intermediate institutions. So most of the democracy is carried on the shoulders of the vertical institutions. These lateral institutions shall be expected to grow. And the next, failure of these institutions and using of the populistic tools like referendum will ultimately lead to majoritarianism in a given democracy, and any kind of majoritarianism is a death to free speech. Next, Kashmir's information vacuum. So today, the law enforcement agencies have a simple answer for any problem: shut down. Shut down the communications. See the communications as this way. These communications are meant to provide for information from one place to the other place. In this case, this communication infrastructure at the control of the government is pushing the people into misery. So, open communication or transparent news, if they are absent, obviously it leads to something called speculation. So speculation leads to more violence. Whenever the government is able to give the information properly to the people and transparency existed, then it has led to more loss of violence. Today, any shutdown of information which can give rise to speculation end up in violence. Second thing, by controlling the information, we create barriers between the people who provide for various kinds of narratives and the people themselves. Let me put it this way. The government can take its narrative forward through various kind of the people in Kashmir. But these people, if they have to have the upper hand, these people shall be given the necessary tools and information things. But that is not existing over here. And more, we are using the section 144, which is meant to impose the curfew for this. There are no proper safeguards. There are no proper procedural controls to this particular shutdown. Just as they call from an officer, this shutdown is happening today. So these safeguards have to be created on the shutdown. Not only a political loss, information shutdown, it is also an economic loss today, because most of the transactions are dependent on digital tools and platforms. So the business is getting hampered. Ultimately, it will create economic loss to the country. In Tamil Nadu, making power the sun shines. Remember, rooftop solar power, it is not getting the momentum which is expected. In this case, in Tamil Nadu, they have created meters. These meters will calculate how much power is consumed by the household and how much power is produced by the household, and the remaining power which is so generated, it will be connected to the grid. But what are the issues with this? First is the government's offering price is very low for this. It is around 2 rupees. On the other hand, government is buying the power from other producers at 8 rupees per unit. And second, there are two kinds of the users. One are consumers who are industrialists, etc., organized consumers, and the next are households. So organized consumers, they take a greater burden on their particular charges, especially electric charges are majorly paid by these on consumers. Households, they get subsidy. So in this context, streamlining this subsidy to retain these consumers is also important. So consumers need to be well protected. So these are the things we need to understand. So rationalization of the subsidy will ultimately lead to rationalization of the prices, will in turn can increase the density of the rooftop solar panels, which will provide for non-fossil fuels. Message delivered. At G7 meeting, Prime Minister Modi met Mr. Trump, and unequivocally it is stated that Kashmir is a bilateral matter and the division of Kashmir to union territories is an internal matter of India. So once this message is delivered, the inconvenience which India is having with US can be countered. Remember again, in this case, United States of America is a country which still holds the control over the narrative of this world. So having good relations with this country is very much important. And second part of this is US has a deep interest in sustaining the loyalties of the Pakistan because they want to withdraw from Afghanistan. So in this context, you do not want to defriend or do not want to get away from Pakistan. And Pakistan is a country which do not think too much about its strategic autonomy. It is not the case with India. So there is a good chance US may tilt back towards Pakistan, which considers Kashmir as a religious issue, which is the argument brought in by Mr. Trump. So in this context, clarifying to Mr. Trump was an important move for India. And the next is murder most fall. This is about honor killings. Supreme Court of India clearly stated that there is no honor in honor killing. So, today, in a globalized world, medieval cultural systems being imposed onto the young minds is the reason for the conflict between the generations. So, the older generations taking the conservative thought and younger generations taking the liberal thought about their marriage, and they want to control their marriage, this is leading to a conflict. So see, the societal norms were set and they take time to change. In this process, certain generations are getting affected. And the caste system is the major reason for this discord among the marriages. So what shall we do is, every step shall be in a direction towards minimizing the role of the caste and stratification system in India. Unless the caste disappears, these things do not disappear. Supreme Court of all India also has clearly stated that this kind of crime is the rarest of the rare crime and death sentence can be awarded in that situation. The next is public health versus free speech. In USA, the warnings and pictorial warnings on the cigarette packets are not yet implemented. In Massachusetts, the order was passed by the court. So lobbyism works very strong, and cigarette lobby, tobacco lobby is very strong in the United States of America. So what this lobby is arguing is now what has to be published on the cigarette packets, it has to be their discretion. So forcing them to say something which they don't want to is violation of their free speech. So these tobacco companies are actually worried that there is an empirical evidence that the sales of the cigarettes will fall by 30% by seeing these disgusting images. So that's what is the worry for them. These are the articles for today. Thank you very much. Have a good day. All the best.